Lately, I've been playing a lot of LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and one character I find myself playing a lot is Finn. Out of all the new characters that were added in the sequel trilogy, Finn was my favorite, for his introduction and relatability. In the game I take him to different planets and act out scenarios or situations that his character could have been in. I genuinely liked Finn, and there was so much that this character had to offer, and yet the writers for the sequel trilogy ended up doing little with him. So, let's take a dive into the character of Finn, and what could have been. As I'm sure most of you watching know, the Star Wars sequel trilogy has been despised by many fans of the franchise, for a number of reasons. I'd say it stems from a lack of preparation. A roadmap wasn't properly laid out for this trilogy, and it shows. With the backlash that Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi got, J.J. Abrams was brought back to tackle the problem. It was an immense task, and although Abrams tried to win over fans with The Rise of Skywalker and its attempt to fix what they hated about The Last Jedi, it was ultimately a convoluted mess that added even more problems to the narrative of the sequel trilogy. All of that aside, let's hone in on the subject of this video. In the opening of The Force Awakens, the First Order attacks a village on the planet Jakku. It is here that we are introduced to FN-2187, a stormtrooper on his first assignment, who is seeing the carnage up close and personal. Up until this point, something that's never really been done in the Star Wars film franchise is seeing an event play out from the perspective of someone on the opposing side. Finn's perspective is interesting in particular because it is from someone who has been indoctrinated into the army for the First Order. Within his first scene, you can already see the potential with his character, knowing his background and seeing the conflict within him. Throughout The Force Awakens, Finn has a character arc where we find him wanting to run away from the First Order at first, knowing the threat that he and his friends are up against, then eventually choosing to face them. All of that culminates in his fight with Kylo Ren. This lightsaber duel is my favorite in the entire sequel trilogy, because I felt it carried real tension. In this scene, Finn stands up against the very face of the First Order, and with his lack of Force abilities, he knows that he will most likely die. But he does so anyway to protect his friend. I find that really inspiring, and a true testament to why I think he was the best character that was added in this trilogy. Which pains me to say, knowing what happens to his character down the line. For the most part, I did like The Force Awakens. Although it did borrow many elements from previous films, it introduced some new ideas, and I was curious to see how the next two films would explore them. Speaking of which, after this film, the trilogy doesn't explore this character much further, and instead he is used to fill in runtime and a subplot that ultimately has no effect on the main story, and is regulated to a side character that shouts, "Right!" every now and then. There was a moment in The Last Jedi where Finn was about to sacrifice himself to keep the First Order from breaching the Resistance base on Crate. It was unexpected, but it would have given more meaning to his character if the writers went through with it. Instead, he is stopped by Rose Tico, and right afterwards, she gives a terrible explanation for doing so.
Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love. I saved you, dummy.
What do you think I was trying to do?
It's not about winning. It's about saving the ones you love.
That's what I was trying to do! Akbar did the exact same thing earlier!
Let's kiss.
What the? No!
It was a real shame to see a character like Finn be used so poorly in the next two films, knowing the groundwork that The Force Awakens laid for his character. With what we know of Finn, here's an alternate path I believe his character could have taken. Finn wakes up after his fight with Kylo Ren. He is caught up on events as the First Order is on the tail of the Resistance. An idea I believe that could have been thoroughly explored is the possibility that Finn wasn't the only one within the First Order that felt the same way he did, but lacked the courage to go against them. While ex-stormtroopers were a thing in The Rise of Skywalker, I personally felt it was a concept that was introduced too late into the trilogy. So with this idea in mind, let's get back to Finn. As allies grow thin for the Resistance, and numbers dwindle, Finn proposes a potentially helpful but highly dangerous plan. He explains to his friends his knowledge of the First Order and the possibility that there are more like him within it. The plan is to start a rebellion within the First Order. Predictably, members of the Resistance have serious doubts in his plan, but at this point in time, their options are limited. Finn volunteers to go on the mission by himself. This storyline gives us the opportunity to learn more about the First Order's history and how they came to be, while also developing Finn's character by delving into his past. In the previous film, there was one shot with General Hux and Captain Phasma looking up Finn's file. We get a glimpse of him as a child, implying that the First Order abducts and indoctrinates children at a very young age. Imagine if the film explored the manipulation that was practiced for their soldiers to be so loyal, and the kind of sick lengths they would go to ensure such loyalty. It would have been a great way to showcase how evil and intimidating these people were, where I felt the films faltered at. Accompanied by BB-8, Finn goes to the planet of a First Order outpost where new recruits are trained, this outpost in particular holding significance to him. He infiltrates the complex and speaks with some of the recruits. Finn does his best to win over their trust, but it proves to be difficult as he can't get too comfortable in this environment. While he is there, he breaks into a room that holds classified files. He ends up finding his own file and learns a terrible truth. His mother and father died fighting to keep their son from being indoctrinated into the First Order. Finn and BB-8 end up getting caught. General Hux is notified of this discovery, and he orders them to take Finn and BB-8 to Snoke's ship. Here, we make the discovery of Captain Phasma's survival. Finn is forced to the ground in the hangar, and is about to be executed. The Resistance ship rams through the First Order fleet with light speed. Now, we have the showdown between Finn and Captain Phasma. Knowing what we have learned in this storyline, this scene ends up carrying more weight. Unlike how it ended in the original film, there was an alternate death scene for Captain Phasma that would have contributed to the idea of stormtroopers potentially turning on the First Order. With that dealt with, Finn and BB-8 return to the Resistance on Crate. Like in the film, Finn decides to sacrifice himself, but this time he is shot down by one of the First Order's AT-ATs, instead of being stopped by Rose Tico. Now that we are done with The Last Jedi, let's move on to The Rise of Skywalker. Finn's actions play into the next film, where we see familiar faces, those being the recruits from the last film. Finn seeks to go on with his plan on starting a rebellion within the First Order, and comes up with a new idea. The files he found in the last film contained information pertaining to those who have been indoctrinated. Finn's idea is to leak those files for all eyes to see. He manages to do so, and many of the stormtroopers see what the First Order has taken away from them. While some still remain loyal to their high-ranking officers, others, like the recruits that Finn met in the last film, turn on them and disrupt their operations. Finn ends up leading a group of ex-stormtroopers to take down a ship and aid the Resistance fleet. What this alternate path has done for Finn is give him development, meaning, and impact to the overall plot of the trilogy. From a subordinate to the First Order, to a leader for free will in the galaxy. From a coward, to a fighter. From a stale character, to an all more important one. Even if the writers did what they did with his character, I still think he is a really good one. It's just sad to think what could have been. The actor John Boyega himself even expressed his disappointment for where they took his character. But for what he was given, I thought he did the best he could. To anyone who is still watching, thank you. And what are your thoughts? What other roads do you think this character could have gone down? Feel free to share in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. May the Force be with you, and have a good day.